Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week's Torah portion, we got a double Torah portion, Behar-Bechukotai. Behar is always read before the giving of the Torah coming up in just 9 days, the holiday of Shavuot. And Bechukotai, we say Chazak as we finish the book of Leviticus, the book of Vayikra. But in the second Torah portion, Bechukotai begins with Ve'im Bechukotai Telechu, Ve'im Mitzvosai Tishmeru. If you're going to go in my ways, you're going to actually Telechu, you're actually going to go, because when we do a mitzvah, it's not stagnant. We got to constantly go and we constantly grow. Then you're going to get all of these beautiful blessings. But if, God forbid, you don't, God continues with what's called a tocha, rebuke, very difficult curses. And it's very difficult to read. It's customarily that the Baal Korah reads it himself. We don't actually call someone up to get the aliyah. And interestingly enough, there's a famous story of the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe. He was always the Baal Korah. And it happened to be that one year he was ill. And at Tzemach Tzedek, when he was listening to this Torah portion, he fainted. And so they came over to him and they asked him, I don't understand, you hear this, what happened? He said, what do you mean you heard all these curses in this week's Torah portion? So they turned to him and said, Rebbe, every single year you hear these, you always hear these curses. What's changed this year? So he said, when my grandfather would read it, it sounded like blessings. Because when the Alter Rebbe would read the curses, he would sweeten the curses into blessings. He would transform them. There's actually an interesting translation. There's a famous translator of the Talmud, Onkelos, who was a convert, a nephew of Titus, and a prince-to-be, and ultimately he went to convert to Judaism. When he translated the word curses, he would translate into lotin. Lotin means literally Aramaic curses. But there's another translator who was a Jerusalemite, who was in the land of Israel, buried in Amukah, next to Tzfat. His name was Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel. He's a famed scholar to visit to get a special blessing for marriage. And he translated as chilufa. Chilufa means transmutation. As God has ultimately, he's the essence of blessings. He's the essence of goodness. But sometimes we can't understand tragedy. Sometimes we can't understand difficulty. Sometimes we get to understand things in life. Sometimes we go through a challenging situation, which ends up being a blessing. Sometimes we go through a difficult surgery, which ultimately we find out could have saved our lives. We go through difficult challenges. Sometimes we get to find out that blessing at the end. Sometimes we get to learn God's mysterious ways. And many times, sadly, like we saw last week, the terrible tragedy in Meron, we just simply cannot understand God's ways. Nevertheless, the idea of curses, of klalos, it really all depends on our perception. It's how we perceive. If we perceive that everything is good, then no matter what challenges that God gives us, we'll be able to make it through it. If we perceive that everything's bad, then we become depressed and we feel like there's challenges that we cannot accomplish. It says that God does not give us any challenges that we cannot overcome. And so this Shabbos, we go into Parshas Bechukotai. We ask for God to chazak v'nis chazek. May He give us strength, that the challenges that He gives us, the curses that seem like curses, should be sweetened to blessings. They shouldn't just be, and this is one of the words that the Rebbe would often use, he would say you should have revealed blessings, because for many of us, we have blessings, but sometimes they're very hidden. Sometimes we don't understand them. Sometimes we don't see them. Sometimes we don't comprehend what it means. For many years, we lost our job. Took many years to get a much greater job, or we dealt with a relationship issue, which ultimately strengthened our relationship. But sometimes, sadly, we never get to understand the blessing which God gave us. And so we ask God to give us revealed blessings and to be strong and strengthened, that when He gives us blessings that we cannot fully decipher, that we should be able to strengthen our belief and be able to strengthen our emunah. And if we know that, then we'll be able to go in Bechukotai Telechu, we'll be able to walk in God's ways. Continue. That's the main word over here. The main word here is Telechu. We should always continue in God's ways, continue to strength, continue to go. And if we do that, then God will give us, of course, all the blessings, and may we all have revealed blessings in our life, for our family, of health, and parnasa, and children, and nachas, and only good blessings for everyone in our community. Shabbat Shalom. Tonight is we're having Shabbat dinner on the rooftop, and tomorrow Shabbat services 10 o'clock.